everybody. Thank you for always throws me when that happens. But thank you for joining today's session. This is part one of a three-part workshop series on product design with Code Untapped in partnership with Kin+Carta Create. So, absolute pleasure to see you all today. My name's Ez. I'm Azachi Britton. I'm one of the co-founders of Code Untapped, alongside Jason. Jason, put your hand up. Jason's my other co-founder and CTO at Code Untapped. Code Untapped is an organization that focuses on showcasing, identifying, upskilling and placing fantastic, diverse technology talent. We do that through our community. We partner with organizations such as Coding Black Females, YSYS, and we've got a number of other organizations as well that are working to join our community as we speak. So we're always growing. We take that great community of diverse talent, we get it onto our community platform, we upskill them through our Codescape technology platform, and then ultimately through our Code Untapped Partners Group, we're able to find them meaningful employment with tier 1 organizations. Around that, we also run a series of workshops and innovation labs. Today, it's all about the workshopping. We're with our fantastic partner, Kin+Carta Create, who have done a workshop with us before on Dart and Flutter, which was a 3-part series. You can find that on our YouTube page if you want to look for it. It was absolutely amazing. Today, they're going to be looking at product development, and they've got a fantastic amount of content to go through. Before we kick off, I just do want to remind everybody that today is being recorded. So if you don't want to be part of that, that's absolutely fine. You can drop off, but bear in mind, it's only the panel who will appear in that recording. This session is going to end about 8:30. We're breaking it up into 3 sections. There will be an intermission at around 7:20. So, you will have a moment to take a break if you need to. And we will be taking questions at the end. But if you have any questions, please do put them in the chat. And myself and Jason will keep an eye on that. And we'll try and make sure those questions get addressed at the end of the session. Okay, so with that, it's me great pleasure to pass over to Xena at Kin+Carta Create.
Amazing. I'm just going to share my screen and then hit play. Yes, thanks for that introduction. We're really excited to be joining and partnering with Code Untapped to host the first of 3 seminars on UX design. Before I start, I just wanted to kind of give you a brief introduction to the instructors today. Let me just hit next, so quick introduction. Yeah, so we have Karina, who is a lead product designer at Kin+Carta. She's actually from Hitchin, but all over the place, and she studied architecture at Glasgow Uni, but she's also been a tutor at General Assembly and been a designer at the BBC, Sky, and many more. We also have Talia, who's an experienced designer at Kin+Carta. She's from a much more exotic location than the two of us, Singapore, and she has an MSc in Human-Computer Interaction from UCL. And then we've got myself. I'm also an experienced designer from less exotic, the Wirral, Posh Scouse. And I actually changed careers from law to study UX design at General Assembly. So just to briefly touch you about Kin+Carta before we talk about UX design, we are a global digital transformation business, and our purpose is to make the world work better. And basically, we are an agency, which means we work with a host of clients to try and figure out what products and services we can launch to market and how to augment existing products that they already have. It's a global organization, so we have about 1,600 digital experts, and we also have partnerships with the likes of Google and Apple. And as we're a global agency, we have a whole host of clients across different sectors, from financial services to agriculture and retail. Just a bit of an example of a few recent products our UK team worked on, design and build. We've worked on the Tesco shopping app, NatWest business banking, B&Q app, as well as Ford and M&S, and a lot of other services as well, so not just apps. I'm just going to very briefly talk to you about what you're going to be learning in this seminar and the next 2 if you wish to attend. So today's seminar is going to be a bit more theory-based. So it's going to be an introduction to what UX design is and what the overall process is, as well as how you actually fit into the product lifecycle. And really what we want to do is just kind of debunk any myths about design and get you hopefully excited to get involved in UX design. The next 2 seminars are going to be a bit more try and learn along, so bring along paper and pen, and it'll be conducting user research and ideation and testing. But you don't have to attend all 3 of them or any of them to learn. They're all standalone, but I would advise come to 2 and 3 if you want to get the most out of it. So for the next kind of hour or so, we're going to be talking you through the process, but we're going to have a few kind of polls and quiz questions just to kind of test your knowledge. So today, at the moment, we're just going to do a very non-UX quiz question. So Charlie, you can test it out for me.
Hopefully that's working.
So next, let's kick off. So what exactly is UX design? Well, the term was popularized by a guy called Don Norman, who people like to think of as like the godfather of UX. And he says that user experience design stands for, it means the experience of users, and also is known as human-centered design. Now, if you read more about Don Norman, you'll find out he was an engineer at Apple, and he promoted the human-centered design process, and also author of this book, The Design of Everyday Things, which I'd advise you to read. It's brilliant. And he states that user experience encompasses all aspects of the end user's interaction with the company, its services, and its products. So what does this mean exactly? Well, what it means is that UX design is putting the human needs first, capabilities and behavior. We then design around it. So who exactly is the user? Well, the user could be anyone. It could be you or I using our mobile phone. It could be your neighbour riding a bike. It could even be poor Chris Whitty with his government slides with a government briefing. Anyone could be a user. I'm going to illustrate a bit of UX design with some examples, show what it means in practice. So taking a look at this door, people will find out later it's known as the Norman doors. There's a handle, but there's a push sign. How might you open this door? Would you pull it or would you push it? Confusing. So this is a good example of poor UX design. The design of the door should indicate how it would work without any need for signs, and certainly without any need for trial or error. Let's do another example. How might you drain this sink? You might have encountered a sink like this. Where's the button? How would you drain it? Would you try and pick it open with your nail or with a coin like this chap here? Actually, the solution for this is to push the stopper. And this is actually an example of a design lacking a signifier, which means something that could indicate how it would be opened. And not only does it lack a signifier, but pushing the button means that you have to put your hand into the dirty water to drain it. So it's not a great experience again. Now, all of these examples illustrate the consequence of poor product behavior, as well as 2 of many design principles, one of which is discoverability, and the other one is understanding. So discoverability is it possible to even figure out what actions are possible and how to perform them? Understanding, what does it mean? How is a product supposed to be used? What do the different control settings mean? Now, I've shown you a couple of real physical word examples of design. I'm going to show you a couple of good and bad digital examples. So WhatsApp, I'm sure many of you have used WhatsApp before. Have you ever sent a message to somebody by accident? You've had to delete it, or you sent them something that was maybe the wrong message for the wrong person. Maybe it was for mum, it was meant for someone else. You've had to delete it. But then WhatsApp shows you that the message has been deleted, shows the recipient, sorry, that the message has been deleted. So as a user, your aim was to delete the message and probably to delete the fact that that message existed, yet the recipient knows it exists. So not a great experience. Now for some good examples. Let's take the Google homepage. So all of us probably use Google. As a user, our one single goal is to search for something. And Google, by focusing on this one goal on the homepage and removing all the clutter, they enable seamless interaction for a user and a lack of friction trying to achieve our goal. Lastly, just moving on to the contactless bank cards from traveling. So if you live in London, you might have come across the Oyster card, and now you have the bank card to travel. So something that the banks have done is they've basically removed the step of having to add money to your Oyster card, removing the friction. And also by mimicking the habits that you use with an Oyster card, it makes the experience familiar for users. So in all of these examples, design decisions have been made with or without fully considering the end user's needs and goals. So what exactly does a UX designer do? Now, I think most people, when they hear the word design, they think visual, they think graphics, making things look pretty. But as the Steve Jobs quote illustrates, it's not just about making things look pretty, it's about the way things work. And actually what you'll learn is design is a multifaceted skill. So while visual design or user interface design is one aspect of UX design, UX encompasses more than just how things look. It can involve content creation, working with clients, conducting research. There's a lot more that goes into it than you might think. You don't actually have to be good at graphic design or good at art to be a designer. What you'll learn as we go along is design is actually an interplay of design, technology, and psychology. I'm just going to show two final visual examples to illustrate why design is not just about appearance. Let's take the ketchup bottle. Everyone's familiar with this. Very aesthetically pleasing, lovely design, but it's a bit of a pain to get the ketchup out. You usually have to bang on the top of it or get a knife to get the ketchup out of the bottle. They've improved on this design to consider the end user's goal. So you squeeze the bottle now and it better caters to a user's habits. Lastly, I'm just going to show you a nice meme that we like to follow the internet. Walking along a path, it's nicely been designed, it follows the lighting, but as a user, you probably just want to get somewhere quicker and you will find a way. So how do we know what to design? What are we actually designing for? Well, when we're designing, we like to think about outcomes, not features. We call this outcome-driven design. So what do I mean by this? Basically, instead of trying to design what we think we should build, we speak to users and we find out about their motivations and what they want to get done. From there, we're able to understand what their current experience is and what are the pains in them trying to achieve that outcome. I'm going to show you a quick example. So let's take this student. Their outcome is that they want to finish an assignment. Through research, we might find out that there are some more pains that are obstacles to them achieving this. A potential tool to reach their desired outcome would be coffee. This is simply a tool to get them to reach their desired outcome. So just remember, we're designing tools for users to reach their wider goal. So just briefly, before I pass over to Talia, talk to you about the overall design process we like to follow. And as a quote from Jesse James Garrett, the author of Elements of Experience, User Experience shows, I can't actually see the quote because the pole's in the way, but have a read of the quote. So when designing, we like to follow the double diamond process. This is a framework for innovation created by the Design Council. And basically the process is a 4-stage process, and it just gives us a really clear visual way of following something. And there are loads of different variations of this. It's not kind of a prescriptive process, but it gives you a really solid framework to follow. So let's talk you through some of the stages of the process. So the first stage is Empathise. So this is when you interview users and you do your research and gain a real understanding of the problem and opportunity from user behavior, needs, and core requirements. Oops, sorry. And then we follow this by synthesis. So using the information you gather from the first stage to help us define the problem space which we want to tackle and make better with our designs. This is then followed by ideations. That's basically, once you know the problem you want to solve, start coming up with potential ideas and solutions and get feedback from users on whether they work. And then lastly, create. Using the validation from testing, we can then refine, build, and deliver the product before moving on to solve something else. Now, depending on the design opportunity and the question that you want to answer, there are lots of different activities. This is just a snapshot of some of them, there are loads. But basically, the idea is to figure out what question you want to solve. And the shape of the diamond basically illustrates the kind of converging, diverging nature of the process. So at the beginning, you go really wide, gather as much research as possible. And then when you synthesize, try and narrow down on what that problem space is, what you're trying to solve. And then when you're ideating, go wide again, come up with as many solutions as possible, and then narrow down again. This is generally not a finite process, and it can be repeated. So just wanted to, before I hand over to Talia, just say that as researchers or UXers, we're often considered detectives. And this quote illustrates it really well. So the similarities between a good researcher and a good detective are quite striking. Maybe this is not a surprise, as both disciplines involve investigation. Both seek to establish a trail of evidence, and both use that evidence to arrive at a solution to the problem. But it goes further. The knowledge required, the skills and experience needed, and the methods and techniques used have a lot in common. So thanks for that. I'm just going to hand over to Talia now.
Thank you. All right, I'm going to share my screen as well. Okay. All right, so as Xena described, there are 4 stages of that double diamond design process, and I'll be walking you through the first and second phase. So before we go into our little comfort break in a bit. So the first phase is the empathize phase. And here we're really trying to understand who our users are and their context, and their struggles relevant to our design areas of interest. So before we even start to design, open our laptop or put pen to paper, we begin our role as detective and investigate our potential users as well as the opportunity space. So here it's all about getting to know our users so that we can understand what they're trying to achieve, how they currently do that, the things that get into their way. So why is speaking to users so important? Often it can be really, really easy for us to fall into the trap of thinking that our users and the people that we're designing our products for is someone who is exactly like us. So again, another meme, but here it's a good illustration of why you know, we need to spend that time talking to our users, as we're not our end users. By spending that time researching those needs, we can break out of our own limited perspective and see a product from the point of view from our users. So in the earlier example that Xena went through, we mentioned the student who needs to stay up to finish their assignment. And Xena mentioned that the solution might be coffee. However, by doing some more in-depth interviews, we might find out some information about our users which might impact design decisions. For example, we find out through some interviews and doing some research that they might be allergic to caffeine or some migraines, so that coffee as a tool or design solution may not be viable for them. So we need to think about other things. That solution could be a cold shower, better sleep, exercise, or something else completely. All of these solutions may potentially help them to get to that end goal, which is finishing an assignment. So in all of this, we need to understand that design is a tool, and when we're designing, we look to acknowledge and understand the user's background and their context. And by building a fuller picture of the user and their habits, we can make sure that we're building the right product for them. So how exactly do we find out more about our users? We use a variety of different research methods and make sure that we're doing good research. So as we mentioned, in all the phases of the double diamond, there are a wealth of methods that you can use, that you can choose from in the UXers toolkit to make sure that you're finding out about your users. And here are some examples. So we've got user interviews, we've got something called guerrilla testing, which is where you go out and you know, see how people are using products live, doing lab testing, field studies, and doing surveys. But however, there are a lot of things here. Whatever method that you do choose, make sure that you're asking the right questions. So for example, at the beginning of a discovery project, we might try to focus on the user, their context, and their desired outcomes. So here we're trying to understand who are our users? What are they doing? What are they trying to accomplish? How do the users think about what they're trying to accomplish? Where and when would they use the product? And what experiences might they find appealing and rewarding? We might also try to find out more about the problems to be solved and the opportunities associated with them. What products are they using? Why do they use those products? What sort of problems do they encounter using them? How big of a problem is it? And what other products out there at the moment? Also, we also want to make sure that we're asking the right people. So here, we want to make sure that we're talking to people who show the representative behaviors or experiences of that target group. So for example, if you think about the previous example of the student wanting to finish an assignment, you might not want to interview someone like your mom or you know, someone who's not a student. Maybe your mom is a student, but in this situation, anyway, it's all about making sure that we get representative people and try to recruit as widely as possible, keeping in mind the budget and time permitting. We also want to make sure that you know, we keep in mind who you're not speaking to as well, as that also impacts your design. We want to consider who we're unintentionally excluding by not talking to them. We want to make sure that our designs keep in mind people's experiences and not inadvertently create barriers for them as well. So here, I'm going to touch upon some 2 common and important research methods in the researcher's toolkit. And they are user interviews and contextual inquiries. So user interviews are a very common research method, as it's very easy to get access to it as long as you have access to users. So this is a qualitative UX research method in which a researcher asks one user questions about a topic of interest with the goal about learning about it. So it's focusing all about on their thinking and what they're feeling, and their attitudes about a product or the situation or a process. So you might follow a rough script, and you might have someone observe and take full notes with you as well. There are a host of different tips and techniques, which we'll get into in seminar 2 as well. And another method that we use a lot is contextual inquiry. So this is all about learning about the user's natural environment as opposed to doing it in a lab, and learning about how they conduct their activities as they normally would. So the context could be their home, their office, or somewhere else entirely. So this is all about learning what people are doing and about their context. It gives us a richer and more relevant information about how users complete processes instead of relying on self-reported research methods like an interview. A great strength of this is that you get to see things that you normally wouldn't anticipate, or uncover lower level details which have become habitual and invisible. Of course, this activity might be hard to do considering COVID, but there are some substitutes like getting your users to write down what they're doing every day, which again, we can talk about in the next seminar as well. So, mixing methods. It's a great idea to combine multiple research methods during this first phase of the design process, so we can get a sense of both how users think and also how they act. So here, thinking back about user interviews and contextual inquiries, interviews are a great way to get a sense about how they think and feel and what they perceive to be true, but it's also best to try to complement them with observational-based research to get an accurate and thorough sense of what users really do. So we have a quiz question now. Xena, if you can execute the quiz question. Okay, so out of the following examples, please select one example of something you would learn from an observational research and not an interview. Okay. Cool. So it seems like everyone got the correct answer. So you probably wouldn't get anyone self-reporting or telling you that they slurp their coffee during an interview, but you probably noticed if you saw them drinking a coffee in real life. Great. So to help us illustrate this a little bit further, and the different insights you might get from these 2 different methods, let's take a look at this example. So here we have a user whose end goal is to stay in touch with her elderly parents. And through initial research, we might learn that she's a new mom and that her parents are elderly. We find out through research that a pain point or an obstacle that she's having is that she can't visit because of COVID. And she wants her parents to be involved with her newborn. Oh, what's in here? Okay. So through some interviews, we find out that she thinks that the phone doesn't feel as comforting. She feels that her budget is tight with a newborn. She says to us that she really wants her parents to see the new baby. She says that her parents own a TV but aren't really tech savvy. And her parents are also shielding because of the pandemic. Through contextual inquiry, we might find that we can observe that all her baby things are in the living room. She needs her hands free to hold the baby whenever she's doing something. The baby always needs changing when they call. Her parents aren't very mobile. And let's see the last one, but I'm sure you can all see it. Okay, so let me go back to this. this combination of insights, what the user is thinking and also what she's doing, will all have an impact on those potential design decisions when we get to phase 3 of the double diamond later on. Okay, great.